What happens when America's sweetheart, Kelly Clarkson, finds herself trapped in the most uncomfortable interview of her career? What began as a routine morning show appearance quickly unraveled into live television. Chaos leaving viewers stunned and NBC executives scrambling behind the scenes. This is the story of how a seemingly harmless question about Kelly's personal life ignited a confrontation so intense that she walked off the Today Show set, leaving Creig Melvin speechless and producers in full-blown panic. If you want to see exactly how this explosive moment unfolded from start to finish, be sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments what you think really pushed Kelly to her breaking point. The morning started like any other at NBC Studios in New York City. Kelly Clarkson, fresh off a successful season of her daytime talk show, arrived for what was supposed to be a standard promotional interview with Craig Melvin. The agenda was simple: her new album, upcoming tour dates, and her continued rise as one of television's most beloved hosts. The mood inside the studio was upbeat. Crew members chatted casually as they prepared for what everyone assumed would be another feel-good segment. Kelly arrived in high spirits, greeting staff warmly and exchanging jokes with makeup artists and production assistants. Her down-to-earth reputation wasn't an act. She was exactly as friendly off-camera as viewers expected. Craig Melvin, polished and prepared, reviewed his talking points with confidence as they settled into their chairs on the iconic Today Show set. Bright studio lights flooded the space, and cameras began rolling on what was scheduled to be a light-hearted, 8-minute conversation. The opening minutes went flawlessly. Craig welcomed Kelly with his trademark warmth, praising her recent achievements and infectious energy. "Kelly, it's always great to have you here," he said with a smile. "You've been absolutely killing it, your talk show. This new album, tell us about the inspiration behind these songs." Kelly's face lit up as she spoke about the creative process, explaining how deeply personal experiences shaped the music. She talked about collaborating with new songwriters and how the album marked a fresh chapter in her life. "This record really reflects where I am right now," she said, gesturing as she spoke. "I wanted to be honest about the joy, the struggles, all of it. Music has always been how I process everything." Craig nodded, asking about specific tracks and her upcoming tour. Kelly laughed easily at his jokes, relaxed and engaged. The kind of guest every morning show hopes for. Then the tone shifted. "Now, I have to ask," Craig said, leaning forward slightly. "Your fans are always curious about your personal life. You've been open about your divorce and how difficult that was. How are you doing, Nand? Are you seeing anyone special?" On the surface, the question sounded harmless, routine even. But Kelly's smile lingered just a fraction too long before something subtle changed. She paused, just briefly. "You know, Craig, I'm in a really good place right now," she said, her voice still warm but edged. "I'm focused on my kids, my career, and taking things one day at a time. That's what feels healthiest for me." It was a clear boundary. A gentle redirect. God, Craig either missed it or chose not to. "That's great to hear," he continued. "There have been rumors lately about you and a certain someone. Any truth to those stories?" Kelly's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "I prefer to keep my private life private, Craig," she said calmly. "And I think my fans understand and respect that." Experienced interviewers knew that tone. It was polite, firm, and final. But instead of moving on, Craig pressed again. "I get valuing privacy," he said. "But your fans love you. They want to see you happy. Surely you can give us just a little hint about what makes Kelly Clarkson happy these days, outside of work." Kelly clasped her hands in her lap. Her jaw tightened. The camera caught the shift, even if many viewers didn't immediately recognize it for what it was: a warning. "What makes me happy?" Kelly repeated, her voice now cool, controlled. What makes me happy is coming on shows like this to talk about my music and my career without watching my personal life get dissected for entertainment. The tension in the studio was suddenly undeniable. Crew members began exchanging uneasy glances, sensing the interview drifting into dangerous territory. Creig, however, seemed either blind to the rising tension or determined to push through it in pursuit of what he clearly believed was a headline-worthy moment. "Kelly, I think you might be reading too much into this," he said, letting out a laugh that landed flat. "We're just talking. Your fans tune in because they care about you, not just the music, not just the performances." Kelly's eyes flashed, the hint of anger unmistakable now, though her posture remained composed. "And I'm grateful for that support, Creig. Truly," she said evenly. "But caring about someone doesn't mean you're entitled to every detail of their life." The exchange had become openly uncomfortable. Creig appeared convinced he was conducting a routine celebrity interview, while Kelly was clearly feeling her boundaries pressed if not outright ignored. "I'm not asking for every detail," Creig shot back, his tone sharpening. "I'm asking basic questions. Questions anyone in the public eye expects. This comes with being a public figure." Kelly's face flushed slightly, and her voice carried an edge rarely heard by viewers of her own show. "What I signed up for was promoting my album and talking about my work," she said. "I didn't sign up to justify my personal choices or provide gossip for people who think my private life is entertainment." The atmosphere in the studio had shifted completely. The warmth from just minutes earlier was gone, replaced by a stiff, almost brittle tension. Creig looked momentarily startled, but instead of shifting course, he doubled down. "Kelly, I think you're being a little defensive," he said, his professional smile faltering. "I'm not invading your privacy. I'm doing my job asking the questions viewers want answered. You've been very open about your struggles before, so I don't understand why this topic is suddenly off limits." Kelly's hands tightened around the arms of her chair. When she spoke, her voice cut cleanly through the bright, cheerful set. "There's a difference between choosing to share your struggles to help others and being pushed to reveal things you're not ready to discuss," she said. "I thought that distinction would be clear." The cameras kept rolling, but behind them, crew members shifted uncomfortably. The segment was supposed to be winding down. Instead, it had turned into a quiet standoff. "I respect your right to privacy," Creig continued. "But you have to admit, when you build a career on being relatable, when you host a show that centers on personal stories, people are going to be curious about your own life." Kelly's eyes narrowed. Her voice dropped, calm in a way that felt dangerous. "So, because I create a safe space for my guests to share their stories, I've somehow forfeited my own right to boundaries," she said. "That's an interesting take, Creig." "That's not what I'm saying," Creig replied quickly, clearly flustered. "I'm saying you can't expect public interest to just disappear when authenticity is your brand." Kelly leaned forward, her voice steady, grounded, and unmistakably firm. "My brand, if we're calling it, that is about being genuine when I choose to share," she said. "It's about respect, about real connection, not feeding people's curiosity just because it's entertaining." The tension in the studio was now impossible to ignore. Staff members exchanged worried looks. Somewhere off camera, a voice whispered sharply into a headset producer's. Urgently coordinating from the control room, Creig seemed to realize he was in trouble. But he pressed one final time. "I hear what you're saying, Kelly," he said. "But reacting this strongly to simple questions is going to make people wonder what you're trying to hide." The words landed like a challenge. Kelly's response was immediate. Her face flushed, but her voice remained controlled tight with restrained fury. "What I'm trying to hide," she repeated, disbelief sharpening every syllable. "What I'm trying to do is protect some sense of normalcy for my children. What I'm trying to do is have relationships that aren't picked apart by strangers. What I'm trying to do is be a human being who happens to be famous." She held his gaze. Not a famous person who's forgotten how to be human. Creig shifted in his chair, the weight of the moment finally sinking in. "Kelly, I didn't mean to suggest no. Let me finish." Kelly cut in, her voice rising just enough to command the room. "You want to know what I'm hiding?" She continued. "I'm hiding the fact that sometimes I sit in my car after interviews like this and cry because it feels like I can't win. If I share too much, I'm accused of exploiting my pain for publicity. If I protect parts of my life, I'm labeled secretive or difficult." Words landed hard. "I'm hiding the fact that my kids ask me why strangers on the internet think they get to weigh in on our lives, why they think our family is public property." The emotion in her voice was raw and unmistakable. Several crew members looked away, visibly uncomfortable witnessing a moment that had crossed far beyond television. Creig's expression shifted from defensive to concerned, but whatever chance there had been to recover was already gone. "And I'm hiding something else," Kelly went on. "I'm hiding how often I question whether this career is worth it when I'm forced to justify my most basic human need for privacy to people who should know better." She looked straight at Key. "Him, you have a family. Creig, would you want millions of strangers picking apart your relationships, judging your choices?" Creig opened his mouth, but Kelly didn't stop. "And you know what else I'm hiding?" she said, her voice now threaded with disappointment. "I'm hiding how deeply let down I am right now. I've always respected you not just as a journalist, but as a person. I thought you understood the difference between journalism and gossip. I thought you would recognize when you crossed a line." The studio fell silent. Only the low hum of equipment and distant newsroom noise filled the air. Creig looked shaken, finally grasping the full weight of what had just happened. "Kelly, I think I misunderstood," he said quietly. "No, Creig," she replied, her voice suddenly calm, dangerously so. "You understood perfectly. You just chose good television over basic decency." She paused, then looked directly into the camera. "You chose to push someone who was clearly uncomfortable because you wanted a moment, something people would talk about." Her gaze returned to Creig. "Well, congratulations. You got your moment." Creig's face drained of color. He fumbled for words, searching for anything that might salvage the situation. "Kelly, I never intended. Intentions don't matter as much as actions," she said firmly. "And your actions today told me you're willing to make your guests uncomfortable for content." She shook her head. "That's not the journalist I thought you were. And it's not the person I thought you were." The words hit him like a physical blow. Creig sank back in his chair. The reality setting in this wasn't just a bad interview. "This was happening live, I think," Kelly said. Standing, "This interview is over." Creig stared up at her, shock quickly giving way to panic as the gravity of the moment spread through the studio. This was live television, and one of America's most beloved entertainers was about to walk off the set of one of the country's most prestigious morning shows. "Kelly, please," Creig said, his voice now stripped of confidence, almost pleading. "Can we just take a breath? Maybe we got off on the wrong foot. Sit back down. Let's start over." Kelly looked down at him, disappointment etched across her face. "Start over," she said quietly. "You can't reset a conversation like it's a computer. You can't unsay what you said or undo how you made me feel." She shook her head. "That's not how relationships work. And it's not how respect works." Creig's desperation crept into his voice. "Look, I might have pushed a little too hard, but that's journalism. Sometimes you have to ask tough questions to get to the truth. Kelly let out a short, humorless laugh. The truth, she asked. What truth were you chasing, Craig? Whether I'm dating someone? How that would help your viewers? Or were you just hoping I'd hand you something juicy to boost ratings? Behind the cameras, crew members had completely frozen. Someone whispered urgently into a headset, likely pleading for guidance from the control room. That's not fair, Craig protested, his composure fully gone. This isn't about ratings. It's about connecting with our audience. The words hung there thin and unconvincing. People relate to you because you've been open about your struggles, Craig said, grasping for footing. They want to know how you're doing. Kelly shook her head slowly. When she spoke again, her voice carried a sadness far more devastating than her anger ever had. People relate to me because I choose to share my struggles in ways that help them feel less alone, she said. I share when I'm ready. In my own space, on my own terms. She took a breath. What you were trying to do was extract information from me like I was something to be mined for content. With calm, deliberate movements, Kelly reached up and unclipped the small microphone from her jacket. Every motion felt final. There's a difference between authentic connection and exploitation, she said quietly. And apparently, you can't see that difference. Craig stood abruptly, panic now fully visible. Kelly, you're being dramatic, he said. This is television. This is what we do. We ask questions, people answer them, and we move on. You're acting like I committed some kind of crime. Kelly paused mid-motion and looked at him not with anger, but with profound disappointment. A crime. No, she said slowly. But you did commit something. She met his eyes. You committed a betrayal of trust. Her words landed like a physical blow. Someone came here in good faith. Someone who trusted you to offer basic respect. And you decided your agenda mattered more than their comfort, more than their dignity. Craig visibly faltered. Confusion giving way to recognition and then something like shame. Achille. That wasn't my intention. I keep hearing about your intentions, Kelly replied, placing the microphone gently on her chair. But intentions without care for impact are meaningless. She gestured lightly between them. You intended to do your job. You didn't consider how your approach would affect me as a human being. You wanted good content, you didn't consider the cost of that content to the person providing it. She glanced around the studio, taking in the stunned faces of crew members frozen in place. You know what the saddest part is? She continued, I actually like doing interviews. I like connecting with people. I like talking about my work. Her voice softened, but only slightly. But moments like this make me want to retreat, to stop being accessible, to build walls instead of bridges. Kelly, Craig said quietly, almost pleading. Please don't let one bad interview change everything. Kelly looked at him, compassion flickering for a brief moment, then gone. This isn't one bad interview, she said firmly. This is a pattern. A culture that treats celebrities like they aren't real people with real boundaries. She began walking toward the edge of the set, slow but resolute. This is about a belief that fame equals consent to intrusion, to entitlement, to invasion. Craig followed a step behind, desperate. What do I tell our viewers? He called out. How do I explain this? Kelly stopped and turned around one final time. Tell them the truth, she said clearly. Tell them you pushed someone past their comfort zone for entertainment and they chose self-respect. She held his gaze. Tell them that when you don't respect people's boundaries, they walk away. Her voice rose not with anger, but conviction. Tell them being famous doesn't mean being available for consumption 24 hours a day. She gestured toward the cameras. Tell them celebrities are human. beings who deserve the same basic courtesy as anyone. Else Creig stood frozen. And tell them, Kelly added, cutting in one last time, that the people they watch, the people who try to entertain and bring joy, go home to real families and carry real burdens. We are not characters written for amusement. With that, Kelly Clarkson walked off the Today Show set. Craig Melvin remained under the harsh studio lights, surrounded by stunned crew members and the undeniable weight of what had just occurred. The cameras continued rolling, capturing his visible distress as he struggled to process the collapse of the interview and how to address the millions watching at home. The silence that followed was deafening. Only the hum of equipment and the distant bustle of the newsroom remained unaware that television history had just been made. Creig stood still for several long seconds before finally turning toward the camera, wearing the expression of a man who knew nothing would ever be quite the same again. So, what do you think really pushed Kelly over the edge? Was it Creig's persistence, his dismissive tone, or something deeper about how celebrities are treated in our culture? Subscribe for more stories like this and let me know in the comments what you believe was the true breaking point in this unforgettable confrontation.